We'll talk about public key infrastructure, or PKI. Very briefly, PKI is a method designed to generate certificates and keys for people to communicate securely without having to pre-share passwords or have to establish some common set of passwords or encryption or anything like that ahead of time. It allows two people who have never communicated before provide or have some type of protected communication. And so it's PKI as a whole is this set of people, processes, and technology and standards to provide methods for identifying, authenticating, and encrypting communications between two parties. And if you look at PKI as a process, there's this concept called the key management process or key management life cycle. And it involves creating, managing, storing, distributing, and revoking keys for or certificates for the purpose of communication. All the details of that is a little bit beyond the scope of what we'll cover. But we did want to put some terms together so that if you're talking about PKI, you know what the big components are in a PKI implementation. And so first and foremost, you have this digital certificate. This is the key, if you will. This is the electronic credential that establishes who you are, is your online identity. And it's what you would present to a server or another person to say, this is who I am. There's a certificate authority. So up at the top of the PKI chain, there is a CA, and this is the root of the implementation, and it's the entity that issues and manages digital certificates. That is the root of trust. The certificate authority does all the identification, does the background checks to make sure that when I request a certificate, I am who I say I am. There are also registration authorities, or RAs. And these are usually delegated functions from the CA. So maybe they just manage digital certificates, or maybe the RA just issues digital certificates, or they could do both. But the registration authority may have some delegated functions from the certificate authority itself. And then at the end there, you have end user or subscribers. So these are the persons, people or hardware actually, that are requesting identification through use of a certificate. So you can have personal certificates which identify, me, Chris, I have my own certificate. I can give that to you and you know who I am. My laptop may also have a certificate associated with it, so that when my laptop talks to a web server, that web server knows who this or what this laptop is, knows the identity of that laptop. You'll also see things like certificate signing requests, or CSR. This is the formal process for when I request a certificate. I need to send information to the certificate authority to generate a certificate for me. The information that they need is contained in that certificate signing request. A certificate depository, you usually see these through OpenPGP or something like that, where you have a central repository of public keys. So that rather than me having to share my key with you ahead of time, you can just go to the repository or the depository, grab my public key, and send a message to me. And that's how you can communicate with me securely without us having discussed anything before. And then two other methods here, the certificate revocation list, the CRL, is how we manage to determine whether certificates are revoked, expired, or otherwise invalid certificates. So as a certificate expires or it's been compromised, it will be put into the certificate revocation list, and anybody can check that to see if my certificate is still valid. And the last one there is related to that, the Online Certificate Status Protocol, OSCP. It's very similar to the CRL, and it's used to validate whether a certificate is expired or not, but it's significantly more effective or efficient than CRLs. CRL, you have to download the entire list and then check, am I still valid? With OSCP, you just query that certificate, that owner, and get a response back, whether that is still a legitimate certificate or not. I'll provide one example for you really quick. And let's say that you've got a user out there, Jane. And Jane wants to have a PKI certificate. And what she's going to do is she's going to send a CSR, certificate signing request, to the certificate authority. The certificate authority will look at that CSR, maybe do a background check on Jane to make sure that the request is legitimate and that she really is who she says she is. And in return, they will give her a certificate. Now, Jane wants to have a conversation with Bob. So what she's going to do is send her certificate down to Bob. Bob is going to say, well, I don't know if this certificate is legitimate or not, but I'm going to ask the certificate authority, is this legit? And the certificate authority will come back with either yes or no, whether it's by verifying the chain of trust here, Bob can validate whether Jane's certificate is real, legit, or not. The other thing he's going to do is check the CRL. Is it expired? Or revoked is actually a better term. Has this certificate been revoked? And he's going to get back a yes or no. Presumably he'll get back a no and everything's okay with the certificate. If all of that passes, then he can communicate back to Jane in some sort of secure, encrypted, authenticated, non-repudiated manner.